You call it quitting alcohol. They call it losing control over you. The moment you sober up, your usefulness shifts, and so does their respect. You think quitting alcohol is a personal upgrade. It isn't. It's a status event, a power event, a threat to the ecosystem that formed around the weaker version of you, because alcohol wasn't just something you drank. It was something people used, directly or indirectly, to keep you predictable. And the moment you remove predictability, the room changes its posture. Here's the Machiavellian lens. People treat you based on what they can extract from you and what they risk by crossing you. Alcohol reduced the risk. It increased the extraction. That's why quitting doesn't just change your behavior, it changes their calculations. When you were drinking, you were easier to steer. Your standards blurred. Your memory softened. Your boundaries became flexible. Your shame was easier to activate. Your discipline became negotiable. Even if you weren't a mess, you were still operating with a leak in your armor. And men with leaks attract operators. Now, most men misunderstand why they're treated differently after quitting. They think it's because they're healthier or more confident. No, it's because you're no longer participating in the same social ritual of weakness. Alcohol is the oldest social contract. Let's lower our control together so nobody has to face themselves. When you quit, you break the contract. And the first response to a man who breaks the contract is not applause. It's suspicion, because you become the sober witness, the man who remembers, the man who sees, the man who doesn't need the same escape. That makes you dangerous, not physically, socially. A sober man changes the geometry of a group. He's harder to manipulate with vibe, pressure, guilt, and just one more. He doesn't dissolve into the crowd's mood. He doesn't forget what was said. He doesn't laugh off disrespect because his nervous system is numbed. He becomes stable. And stability is power. But power isn't loved by everyone. Power is resisted, especially by those who benefited from your weakness. Quitting alcohol removes a lever that people were using on you, sometimes consciously, often instinctively. That lever might have looked innocent. Come on, loosen up. Don't be boring. You were more fun before. Just drink, stop acting superior. Those aren't invitations. They're dominance signals disguised as jokes. They're attempts to pull you back into the predictable version of yourself. Because the fun you was often the manageable you. And the manageable you paid more, apologized faster, tolerated more, and noticed less. So when you quit, you don't just remove alcohol. You remove the role you played, the guy who can be pushed, pressured, teased, and steered. Now here's the moral inversion, the part your old programming will resist. Being fun is often just being exploitable with a smile. And being chill is often just being trainable. Alcohol trains men into social compliance. It makes you accept environments you should leave. It makes you tolerate people you should cut off. It makes you say yes when your sober mind would say no. And when you become the man who says no, you'll notice something brutal. Some people don't miss your company. They miss your compliance. That's why they treat you differently. Not because you quit drinking, because you quit being easy. You are not entering a self-improvement journey. You are entering a reputation shift. Quitting alcohol is a signal to the world. I govern myself. And that signal forces others to decide how to respond. Some will respect it quietly. Some will fear it silently. Some will mock it publicly. All three reactions are the same thing, recalculation. Because when a man becomes sober, he becomes harder to read, harder to move, harder to guilt, harder to bait. He stops being entertainment and starts being a standard. And standards don't make you popular. Standards make you dangerous to the weak, the dependent, and the manipulative. That's the lens shift. From here, we get surgical. How alcohol functioned as a leash, who reacts when it's gone, and how to turn sobriety into an unchallengeable power posture. Alcohol wasn't your problem. It was your permission slip. A permission slip for weaker decisions, looser standards, softer memory, and cheaper access to you. And the reason people treat you differently after quitting is simple. They lost the easiest way to steer you. Here's the mechanism in Machiavellian terms. Control doesn't require chains. It requires predictable openings. Alcohol creates openings. It lowers the cost of pushing you past your own limits. It makes you socially negotiable. When you drink, your patterns tighten. You become easier to schedule, easier to tempt, easier to pull into environments you'd reject sober. Friday drinks becomes a ritual. Rituals become roots. Roots become leverage. Now other people can anticipate you. They can plan around your weakness. Predators love predictable men, not because they're evil villains, because predictable men are cheap to manage. When you quit, your root disappears. The old inn to your life closes. They can't summon you with the same button, so their posture changes. They get colder or they get pushy, because they're not losing alcohol. They're losing access. Most men don't realize how many boundaries they only enforce sober. When alcohol enters, you tolerate one more disrespect. One more joke at your expense, one more insult framed as banter, one more person touching your space, your time, your dignity, one more compromise you'll regret. Why? Because alcohol blurs the internal alarm system. You still feel the violation, but you delay the consequence. You laugh it off. You postpone enforcement, and postponement is training. People learn. He won't act. That's why quitting changes respect. Your boundaries stop being theoretical, they become real, and real boundaries make manipulators nervous. This is the one nobody wants to admit. A man who forgets is a man who can be rewritten. Alcohol creates plausible deniability for everyone. I didn't say that. You're exaggerating. You're taking it too seriously. We were drunk. Who cares? A sober man is a threat because he becomes a witness. Witnesses end games. Witnesses destroy lies. Witnesses bring consequences. That's why some people get uncomfortable around you when you quit. They can't rely on the fog anymore. Your clarity becomes a weapon against their storytelling. When you drink regularly, a quiet thing happens. You start negotiating with yourself. I'll start tomorrow. It's not that bad. I deserve this. That internal negotiation becomes a habit. And once you negotiate with yourself, you negotiate with others too. You accept smaller treatment because you're already compromised inside. People sense compromise. They don't need proof. They smell it. That's why quitting changes the way they treat you, because a man with self-command carries a different gravity. He doesn't chase approval as desperately. He doesn't laugh at humiliation to stay included. He can leave. And the ability to leave is the foundation of respect. Groups don't just drink, they bond through mutual weakness. Alcohol is a ritual of shared lowering. It creates a pact. We'll all blur ourselves together so nobody has to feel judged. When you quit, you become the man who refused the pact. Now your existence challenges them. It highlights their lack of control, it removes their favorite excuse, it makes their own dependency visible so they punish you, not always consciously, but instinctively. Mockery, exclusion, you're boring, you changed. Who do you think you are? That punishment is meant to pull you back into the herd, because a herd survives by sameness. A sober man is difference. Difference is threat. So the mechanism is clear. Alcohol was a leash because it made you predictable, boundary soft, forgetful, self-negotiating, and socially compliant. Quitting removes those openings. That forces a recalculation of your value and your rank. Some people will respect you more, some will fear you, some will try to drag you back down. Quitting alcohol doesn't reveal your real friends. It reveals your real economy, who benefited from your weakness, who profited from your compliance, who felt safer when you were blurred, laughing, and easy to steer. A Machiavellian man doesn't romanticize relationships, he audits them. Sobriety is the audit. Here are the archetypes that change first when you stop drinking, and what their reaction actually means. This isn't a friend, it's a shared ritual. They don't bond with you through values. They bond with you through intoxication, stories, chaos, excuses, mutual lowering. When you quit, you remove the glue. Their reaction is usually, "Come on, just one. You're not fun anymore. Don't be soft." Translation: your sobriety threatens their access to a version of you they could use as entertainment, as company, as a mirror that says, "I'm fine too." They're not mourning you. They're mourning the loss of a co-signer for their behavior. This one polices identity. They decide what's cool, boring, real, weak. Their power comes from controlling the social frame. Alcohol is their tool because it defines membership. Drink with us or you're out. When you quit, they treat it like betrayal. They'll mock you publicly because public ridicule is enforcement. If they can make you feel small, they can keep the group in line. Their real fear is not your sobriety. It's your independence. Because independence breaks their authority. This one liked you when you were easy. You were available, spontaneous, agreeable. You'd show up anywhere. You'd spend money. You'd tolerate nonsense. That made you useful. Once sober, you become selective. You say no. You leave earlier. You don't tolerate disrespect. You remember what was said. And suddenly, they don't vibe with you anymore. That's not chemistry, that's economics. You stopped being convenient. Opportunists dislike standards because standards expose their laziness. If you quit and your partner suddenly becomes hostile, watch closely. Some partners preferred you drinking because it made you easier to manage. More apologetic, less sharp, more dependent, less disciplined, more likely to accept blame. When you sober up, your boundaries return. Your memory returns. Your self-respect returns. So they escalate. Guilt: you think you're better than me. Suspicion: who are you trying to impress? Sabotage: just drink, stop being difficult. Tests: prove you still care, come out with me. This archetype doesn't fear alcohol leaving. It fears control leaving. This one actively tries to pull you back. They'll offer you drinks accidentally. They'll plan events around alcohol. They'll downplay your progress. They'll put you in environments designed to weaken your resolve. Not always with malice, sometimes with jealousy. Your sobriety becomes a mirror that reflects their lack of discipline, and mirrors create anger in weak men. So they try to crack you, then watch you fail, because your failure makes them feel safe again. If you relapse, they don't have to change. Not everyone reacts loudly. Some people watch quietly and re-rank you upward. They won't praise you. They'll just treat you with more caution, more respect, more seriousness. Why? Because sobriety signals self-command, stability long-term, thinking, resistance to peer pressure. These traits are threatening to manipulators and attractive to strategists. This archetype might offer you opportunities, trust, or proximity, but they'll do it without emotion. They're reading your power. The genuine ally doesn't pressure you, doesn't tease you, doesn't make it about them. They adjust without drama. They plan differently. They protect your environment. They don't need you drunk to enjoy you. And the key marker: they don't punish your standards. When you stop drinking, people don't change. They reveal. Their reaction tells you what role you served: entertainment, validation, weakness, cover, compliance, source, social shield. Sobriety forces the truth out because it removes the fog and removes the ritual. And once you can name the archetype, you stop trying to keep everyone. You start selecting who deserves access to the new version of you. When you quit alcohol, you don't just stop drinking. You stop participating in a shared religion, the religion of excuses. And every religion punishes heretics. That's the backlash you feel, subtle at first, then organized. Because your sobriety doesn't attack their taste, it attacks their identity. It exposes what they're unwilling to control. A sober man becomes a living accusation without saying a word. Not because he's judging, because he's proof. And proof is dangerous to people who survive by denial. Groups survive by sameness. If everyone is lowering themselves together, no one has to feel ashamed. Alcohol creates a herd effect. Shared stories, shared vulnerability, shared permission to be sloppy. It makes mediocrity feel normal. Then you quit. Now the herd has a problem. You're still standing while they're kneeling. That contrast creates tension. So the group does what groups have always done to threatening difference. They try to pull you back down, not with open attack at first, with social weapons. You're boring now. Come on, don't be soft. Just one, stop acting like a monk. Mockery is not a joke. It's enforcement. It's designed to make you self-correct, to make you drink just to avoid being singled out. Because the herd doesn't want your success. It wants your compliance. Mockery is a collar that says, stay in your role. Then comes the quiet punishment. You stop getting invited, not because they hate you, because you disrupt the ritual. Your presence changes the vibe. You don't laugh at the same stupidity. You leave earlier. You remember things, and they don't want a witness, so they exclude you to protect the group's comfort. This is how societies keep weak patterns alive. They exile the man who refuses to participate. This is the one you need to anticipate. They'll place alcohol in front of you accidentally. They'll plan events where drinking is the center. They'll pressure you when you're tired, stressed, or lonely. They're not always conscious saboteurs, but the effect is the same. They test whether your sovereignty is real. If you break once, the whole group relaxes. They'll treat your relapse like proof that your discipline was fake. And then contempt returns, because now you're not just weak. You're weak and you tried to rise. The herd hates the man who tries to climb. If you don't bend, they escalate to stories. They'll explain your sobriety in a way that protects their identity. He thinks he's better than us. He's becoming weird. He's probably depressed. He's controlling. He can't handle life without rules. This is Machiavellian narrative control. If they can't control your behavior, they'll control how others interpret it. And once the narrative is installed, the room treats you differently, not because of your actions, but because of the story attached to you. That's how backlash becomes culture. Men build social rank through shared rituals. Drinking is one of the most common rituals for male bonding. So quitting isn't just health. It's a threat to belonging, and belonging is a survival instinct. That's why the pressure feels personal. It's not. It's structural. The group doesn't want you dead. It wants you predictable. It wants you to stay the same so nobody has to confront themselves. The brutal truth. Sobriety exposes the whole room. A sober man sees more. He hears more. He remembers more. That alone makes him dangerous in social hierarchies where everyone hides behind fog. You become harder to manipulate, harder to bait, harder to guilt, harder to frame. So the backlash is the system defending itself. If people punish your sobriety, it's because your sobriety threatens their leverage, their identity, or their comfort. That means two things. Expect it. Don't act surprised. Treat it like warfare, not feelings. Because the moment you interpret backlash as "they don't love me," you'll be tempted to buy back acceptance with a drink. That purchase is expensive. It costs you sovereignty. Next, we go tactical. How to move through this backlash without becoming isolated, preachy, or emotionally reactive. How to turn sobriety into a posture nobody dares challenge. Sobriety isn't a lifestyle, it's a position, and positions require protocol. Because the world doesn't respect your intentions, it respects your enforcement. If you quit alcohol but keep moving like the same accessible, approval-seeking man, people will keep treating you the same, just with new ways to test you. So here is the Machiavellian sobriety protocol, a set of behavioral rules that turns sobriety into power, not a debate. Most men talk about quitting like they're asking permission. I'm trying. I had a problem. I'm being good. I just want to be healthy. That frame makes you look fragile and defensive. It invites jokes, persuasion, and help. You don't frame sobriety as healing. You frame it as policy. Short, cold, final. Examples. I don't drink. Not my thing. I'm good. No story, no background, no emotional history, because explanations give the herd a handle to grab, never say. Maybe later, just this once. I'll see. I'm trying. Those are cracks. Cracks invite pressure. Machiavellian clarity is binary, yes or no. When you make it binary, manipulators stop investing energy. They look for easier targets. Amateurs rely on willpower. Strategists rely on logistics. If you keep standing in the same bar with the same crowd at the same hour, you are begging entropy to win. So you redesign your environment with cold math. Fewer late night, hangouts, more daylight settings, more structured routines, more distance from ritual nights, new places where drinking is not the center. This isn't morality. This is supply line warfare. You don't fight cravings directly. You starve the situations that feed them. Alcohol is rarely about taste. It's about ritual, release, bonding, belonging, escape. If you remove alcohol but keep the same empty slot in your life, the slot will demand to be filled. So you install replacement rituals that reinforce sovereignty, training long walks at night instead of bars early mornings that punish late nights, skill-building sessions, controlled social circles, not self-care. Structure. Because structure is what separates disciplined men from managed men. When someone pushes you to drink, don't argue. Categorize. Pressure is information. If they insist, they're not your friend, they're protecting a system. If they tease, they're testing rank. If they guilt, they're extracting compliance. So you respond with calm refusal and a mental note. This person wants you weaker. You don't confront, you adjust access. Less time. Less proximity, less intimacy, selection. You need phrases that shut doors without drama. Use hard stops. No, I said no. Drop it. Not discussing it. If they push again, you don't repeat yourself like a pleader. You add cost. If you keep pushing, I'm leaving. Then you leave. Words without action are noise. Action is the only language contempt understands. Here's the trap. Men quit drinking and become moral missionaries. That makes the room hate you, not respect you. You don't preach. You don't announce. You don't judge. You simply live differently and let the silence do the intimidation. Your calm refusal creates more pressure than your speeches ever will, because it implies, I don't need your approval. That's what people feel. That's what triggers the rank shift. Sobriety changes how people treat you because it changes who you can tolerate. So you build a new circle without drama, more time with disciplined men, less time with excuse-driven men. No announcements. No, I'm cutting you off. Just absence. A Machiavellian man doesn't declare war. He withdraws resources from unprofitable alliances. This protocol does one thing. It turns your sobriety into an unchallengeable posture. Not because you're strong, because you're unavailable for negotiation. And once people realize you won't bend, the teasing stops, the pressure stops, the disrespect stops, or the relationship ends. Either outcome is victory, because sobriety isn't about being clean. It's about being ungovernable. If you quit alcohol but keep the same identity, you'll relapse. Maybe not into drinking, but into being manageable. Because alcohol wasn't just a liquid. It was a personality license. It gave you permission to be easy, to tolerate nonsense, to laugh off disrespect, to stay in rooms that drained you, to accept people who only liked you when you were softened. So the identity that must die is not the drinker. It's the accessible man, the one who confuses being liked with being safe. That man survives by one currency, approval, and alcohol made approval cheap. You could buy belonging with a glass. Now you can't, so you will feel a vacuum. And most men fill vacuums with the same old behaviors. Over-explaining, people-pleasing, chasing invitations, trying to prove they're still fun. That's weakness wearing sobriety. This is where you execute the old identity and install a new one, Machiavellian, disciplined, sovereign. Fun is often just your willingness to be used as entertainment. When you were drinking, you were easier to tease, push, pressure, manipulate, keep in the room longer than you should stay. That version of you made other people comfortable because it lowered the standards in the air. So the first identity death is this. You stop performing for acceptance. A man who performs is a man who can be directed. A man who can be directed can be disrespected. Your new identity is not fun, it's solid. And solidity creates respect even when it creates distance. The drinking identity often comes with a soft habit. Forgive quickly, forget quickly. Why? Because you don't want conflict. You want harmony. You want the night to keep going. That reflex trains people to cross you. They learn the cost is temporary discomfort, then you reset. Sovereignty requires memory, not emotional grudges, evidence. A Machiavellian man doesn't forgive automatically. He evaluates. Was it accidental or strategic? Was it once or repeated? Did they correct behavior without being coached? If not, access decreases. Forgiveness becomes earned, not gifted. This is the biggest execution. Alcohol made you socially accessible, messages late at night, random plans, last-minute invites, endless, come through. You responded because being included felt like safety. But a man who is always reachable becomes a utility. Utilities get used, not respected. So the new identity installs a law. My time is protected territory. You don't rush to respond. You don't chase invites. You don't keep your weekends open for other men's impulses. You decide. That decision, quiet and consistent, changes how people treat you more than any speech. Here's the harsh truth. Alcohol often keeps weak social circles alive. Without drinking, you realize there was nothing else there. No substance, no loyalty, no alignment, just shared lowering. Sobriety reveals the emptiness, and emptiness scares men because it feels like exile. So they run back to the bottle or back to the old crowd just to avoid silence. A Machiavellian man accepts the silence as a filter. He replaces belonging with selection. Who improves my discipline? Who respects my standards without negotiation? Who benefits from me being weak? Who wants me stable? And who wants me blurred? You stop asking, do they like me? You ask, are they aligned with the man I'm building? That is replacement identity thinking. This is the final form, a man who cannot be bribed with. Approval teasing inclusion, just one, social comfort, because once you can't be bribed, you can't be managed. You become the man who walks into a room and doesn't need it. You can sit in silence. You can leave early. You can decline without explaining. You can watch people squirm and remain calm. That calm is power, not loud dominance, quiet sovereignty. So the replacement identity is simple. You are no longer the man who buys peace with a drink. You are the man who enforces peace with standards. And when that identity is real, people treat you differently because they feel it immediately. You're harder to pressure, harder to shame, harder to steer, which means you're no longer safe to disrespect. Here's the final warning. Quitting alcohol doesn't just end a habit. It declares war on the social order built around your weakness. And the moment you look stronger, certain people don't celebrate. They strategize. Because your sobriety doesn't only change you, it changes your rank. It removes their leverage. It removes their favorite version of you. The version that forgets, forgives, laughs, and stays. So expect this. They will try to drag you back down, not always with violence, with tactics. And the most dangerous part is that these tactics will come disguised as love, friendship, tradition, and fun. You were better when you drank. I miss the old you. We had the best nights back then. This is not nostalgia. It's manipulation. They're trying to resurrect a version of you that served them. The old you was not better. The old you was more compliant, more available, easier to control. A Machiavellian lens reads nostalgia as a leash, a soft pull back into the role you escaped. You think you're better than us. You're boring now. You've changed. Of course you changed. That's the point. But the attack is designed to make you defend yourself. And the moment you defend, you're negotiating. You're seeking permission to be disciplined. Never seek permission to be sovereign. A sovereign doesn't defend his standards. He enforces them. They'll time it perfectly. When you're lonely, when you're stressed, when you're angry, when you're tired, they'll offer a drink like it's kindness. Just relax. Or they'll put it in your environment like it's nothing. This isn't always deliberate sabotage, but the function is the same, to see if your sovereignty is real or performative. And here's the rule: one relapse becomes a social permission slip. If you break, the room relaxes. They regain superiority. They can treat your discipline as a phase. That's why your sobriety must be non-negotiable, not because alcohol is evil, but because people are opportunistic. Some will pretend to worry about you. Are you okay? You seem intense. You don't laugh anymore. This isn't healthy. This is therapy language used as social control. They want to frame your discipline as pathology, because if they can label it unhealthy, they can justify pulling you back into the herd. A Machiavellian man understands. Concern can be a weapon. Not all concern is false. But when concern appears only after you become harder to control, it's not concern. It's resistance. If you don't return to the ritual, they'll try to show you how replaceable you are. New drinking partners, new circles, loud social posts. We're having the best time. This is not happiness, it's intimidation. The message is, comply or be excluded. Your response is not jealousy, your response is silence. A sovereign accepts replacement as proof the bond was built on weakness, not loyalty. The hard truth: some people need you weaker, they may not hate you. They may even love you in their own limited way. But their love has conditions. You must remain manageable. If your discipline makes them feel small, they will resent you. If your clarity exposes their habits, they will punish you. If your standards change the room, they will try to restore the old order. So you must decide what you want more: belonging or sovereignty. Because quitting alcohol often costs a man a certain kind of social life, the one built on intoxication, excuses, and shared lowering. Good, let it die. A Machiavellian man doesn't mourn the loss of weak alliances. He celebrates the removal of parasites. If you're serious, don't turn sobriety into a private hope. Turn it into a public standard through behavior. Refuse without explanation. Leave without drama. Remove access from anyone who pressures you. Upgrade your environment like a strategist, quietly. And if you're not ready for that, stop pretending the world is unfair. You're simply choosing to remain governable. If you want to live unbribable, write one word in the comments: sovereign. Not for motivation, for accountability. Because from this point forward, either you control your nervous system or someone else will.